So far on Alex Builds, and despite having no building experience, I decided to build an old style barn on a massively sloping plot. I bought some stone and built a test wall, got some trees cut down, then hired a digger, with which I ruined my garden, pulled out 2 tree stumps, dug some trenches, cocked up those trenches and fixed the trenches. I built a concrete chute through which we cocked up the concrete pour which set with a slope, which we fixed by cutting loads of trench blocks and laying them to offset the slope. I then got my act together, but it snowed and rained really hard. We eventually got them all in and then filled it with 60 tonne of aggregate. Hello folks, bit of a longer episode today because we've got a double bill. We've got the insulation and the slab going in. Okay, let's just get you in the picture again of what we had to do and what we're doing today. So this is the plot in profile. And the key thing is that we had to dig down 2.2 metres, and that's because the barn needed to be up here so that you could get cars into it from the driveway. So here's the actual shape of the plot as the plot then was. So in episode 3, we took out a tree, and then part 4, we excavated the garden. In part 5 of this series, we then hit the tree stumps, had to remove those. We then dug the trenches, had the first concrete fiasco, which I'm hoping not to repeat in today's episode. And then we used block work to build up and sort out the difference in levels in the concrete. We then dug the subsoil out of the site and banked up the sides. Then what we did is in the last episode, we put the aggregate in and whacker plated it down. So that gets us up to where we are right now. Okay, so let's just zoom in and I'll show you what we're trying to do. And let me just slightly haze this out so that you can see more clearly what we're going to do. So this gap we need to fill in. First of all, we need to put a damp-proof membrane. Basically a load of polythene layer goes all the way in there. Next, we have to put insulation in. This is foil-backed foam. And on the bottom, we're going to use quite thick insulation, which is 100mm, that's 10 centimetres thick, which we're going to cut to shape. The other thing we need to do is then we use a 25mm thickness insulation sheet. We're going to cut that, and that gives a bit of side insulation for where the concrete's going to go in. Next, we have to get another layer of the damp-proof membrane, which goes down on top like that. And then that allows us to pour the concrete in. And we are, in some places, we're using steel reinforcing bar, rebar, that will go in there before you pour the concrete in, and then the concrete goes in, and hey presto, there's your slab. So here is where we left things in the end of the last video. Got the aggregate down, it's all whacked down. You might just look at the top there, you can see I've put a kind of bit of masonry in so that I can get the digger, actually my car, you might remember I put in for no reason, in and out. I'm going to address that in the next section. So bit of a layer cake coming up here. So there's the aggregate down, and the first job is to put a sort of shallowish layer of sand. Just like to introduce my son here, this is Ben. For what he lacks in practical building experience, he makes up for in low rate of pay. So anyway, only joking. Great to have another pair of hands on site. Okay, so we're going to be really cracking on with the final sections of the groundwork. Now, a lot of these top row of the blocks were damaged by the digger and me scraping things over them. So what I've done is I've actually taken the front course off. But there is partly a reason for this, because it's occurred to me that when I come to pour the concrete slab in, I actually want the concrete slab to lip over the block work at the front where the vehicles will come in. Otherwise, I fear it's going to move, and when we come to screed it later, we're going to get cracking. And also, I don't really want the bricks, the block work, to be exposed. So I'm going to take the slab over the top of the block work at the front, at the gap, and I'm going to do the same where there is a doorway entrance. And as I said, also just the blocks needed redoing. So that's the first job. Meanwhile, we're going to get some sand down to protect the DPM that we're going to put down, and then we're going to start building up the insulation ahead of the concrete pour, which is coming this Wednesday, with building regs in on Tuesday. It was around this time that I finally got planning permission. I'd actually been doing this build at risk from January until July, can you believe, when it came through. Now, I did take advice and I spoke to the council about my application. They said it would probably be fine, so I wasn't flying completely blind. But I didn't want to go any further than this without it, because I mean, it's one thing having to change what you've done. When concrete slabs of reinforcing bar goes in, that's not easy to change. So it was a big relief to get it. obviously 4 metres, remember it's got to drop 20 as well. So that will take us to, there's 4 sets, it's going to be 20 centimetres left, it's going to be 380, okay? Get the other end of this, underneath. Right, so what we're going to do, okay, walk backwards, go over here. Yep. Put this on here. In. Go on top of. Saw through my leg. Go on, Ben, will you crack on, please? Okay, the insulation's down. Looks alright. You can see some edges clipping out just because of the undulations, but I think there's enough flex in it, it's fine. As always with me, it's not exactly the neatest job in the world. So we've got the polythene, well, the damp-proof membrane clipping over the top. As I say, it's gone down pretty well, pretty tight, and with not a huge amount left over. Those ones over there are the 25mm ones, so that's fine. The only thing is there's rain forecast tonight, and I don't know, can you leave this stuff out? Doesn't seem like a good idea to let it get wet, so I'm going to try and quickly get the rest of the damp proofing down on top, the next layer of that, give it a bit of protection overnight. The way this goes down is you put a layer of sand to protect the membrane goes down, which you saw me and Ben doing, and then you put the insulation in. Then on top of that, you do another layer of the damp-proof membrane I'm doing here to put the concrete on top of to protect the insulation. As I am quickly discovering, I have not bought enough of it. I'm about to make an utterly futile attempt to cover it with a little tarpaulin. This is me now Googling, can you leave insulation out overnight? And because there's rain forecast and because I've got a damp-proof membrane in, it's not that the stuff can't get wet. I mean, it's been stored outside for a few days. It's that it will just be sitting in water. The water's going to fill up that damp-proof membrane you can see underneath there. So it needed to come up. Anyway, we did that, and then the next day we went and bought more of this membrane. And we put the insulation back in. So this is us now getting ready with that final stage, ready for the concrete pour. Two hours till concrete slab comes. Just a few jobs to finish off. First of all, you can see we've got this row of insulation on the side that's 25mm thick. The building controller who approved everything yesterday has advised we put that in. I had already started it. And the other job I had to do was sort out the rebar. 4 sheets of reinforcing bar, and you can see it sitting up on those castles. Well, those were actually 100mm high. I was supplied the wrong type by my supplier, but I've got a bag of them there which I bought, which are concrete ones at 50mm. I've done rebar at that end because that's where cars are going to go and be parked. I don't know if I needed it, but I decided belt and braces, overdo it if anything. I don't know if you've watched episode 9 of this series, but I suggest you do if you want to see the concrete fiasco. And one of the decisions that I made this time was that I was going to use a concrete pump. You don't operate them yourselves. That lorry you see there is a concrete pump, and this is the operator who comes supplied with it. And here I am just trimming that rebar off to fit in with that lip. So we really are on the last jobs here. As well as having a concrete pump, another change from last time. That's right, it's my old mate Gareth's back.
They just want for us, a couple of quick jobs. Right. Flipping warm. Yeah. Good to see you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're all ready to go now. The concrete pump guy, nice guy called Ian, by the way. He's just waiting. I made him a cuppa. And we're just waiting for the concrete. The concrete pump and the mixer actually came as a pair. Breedon do have a unit that supply them. I was going to do it individually. But of course, Ian, the concrete pump guy, turned up earlier to get himself set up. And here we are. Here is the mixer just pulling in the top right of the picture now. Okay, so we are all ready to go here. Somehow I managed to miss the moment where the concrete came out from this camera, but don't worry, I've got some fantastic drone footage. Bit of water coming out at first, and then you'll see the concrete start coming out behind it. Now this guy Ian absolutely knows what he's doing, but even so, I mean, it just made such light work of the whole job. Just flowing in. No problem at all, moving it around. You can see here that he's filling in that lip I was talking about. So this is actually sitting on top of the blockwork, albeit with the damp-proof membrane on top. You can actually see I've put a bit of wood across there just to keep that concrete in. So it means that we've kind of got a lip, a shelf of the slab. The slab is going over the blockwork at that point. Now at this point, Gareth and I are watching and getting ready to tamp it down, but obviously we needed a little bit more depth in it first. So as you can see, this is going in very, very nicely. The guy's pumping in, giving a bit of rake, and you can see it's smoothing out really well. However, when Alex Builds and Concrete are involved, nothing's going to go entirely according to plan. And what's happened here is we haven't got enough concrete. You can see to the left we've run out. I thought I actually over-ordered by a cubic metre this time, and I actually even thought I'd use a bit of extra concrete to sort of go around the trench around the front of the blockwork for the facing stone. The reason why I got it under, I just think with all the undulations it was deeper in the middle than I thought it was, and I'm not sure if I actually took enough into account. You know, I was talking about that step, that lip, where I took the blockwork out, so that might have accounted for it as well. Anyway, not a major problem. What we decided to do, I mean, we couldn't scrape the concrete out from the garage end because it's got rebar within it, and I didn't want to. So we decided to get a bit of wood, which you can see is playing with here, and what we're going to do is we're going to embed that in, basically to create a small step, which will be fine. We'll screed that later on. and then scrape this area back, level it out, and we knew that we had enough concrete basically to do that. So just sawing a length of 2x4 here to fit in that gap. In terms of then installing it, really was just a case of pushing it in and actually just giving it a bit of a stamp down. Problem is though, is that you can see, of course, it floats on the concrete. But that's nothing that a few spare trench blocks can't sort out. From then it was just a case of scraping that concrete back from the wood, which would ultimately then create a small step between the garage level and the workshop level, which I think, as I said, we will ultimately screed up. Final jobs now, just cutting another bit of 2x4 length just so we can tamp this section down. Didn't take too long actually to scrape all that concrete down, probably about 20 minutes in the end.
It'll be alright, it'll sink down.
Yeah. Now that's a slab. That could not have gone much better. I wish now I had got the concrete pump for when I did the trench. Not that it matters, but the concrete pump is the way forward. Just went down really easily and we tamped it down. Had to shift quite a bit in the end because it's a bit shallow. We undercooked it. Should have got 7 meters cubed, but I don't care. That's a real result. So we're out of the ground.
Well, that was recorded on the day, and as you can tell, I was really pleased. You know, all those cock-ups, all those problems, they're forgotten now. They're in there, and you know, I'm still amazed as a DIYer I've actually managed to get this far. But there is a long way to go as we go into phase 2, and if you look on the top right hand side, you can see some very big bags of very heavy stone, and that is delivery 1 of 3. But we've got that all to come. Anyway, thanks very much for watching Alex Builds, and do give me a like, do subscribe because I've got more episodes coming up soon, and if you leave me a comment, I do generally reply. Thanks for watching, see you next time.